The Correspondent by Virginia Evans is told in true epistolary format, containing only letters and emails back and forth with the main character. So should you write this one off? Hi, I'm Amanda, and this is Spineless Books, your one-stop, spoiler-free shop for all things audiobook. I picked up The Correspondent after seeing it recommended by Ann Patchett. Now, I think of Ann Patchett as an author who writes slow and really interesting weaving character stories. And true to form, this book is like an Ann Patchett book in that way. It's definitely a slow burn, and it definitely requires patience, so I think it's important to know that before you go into this one. The Correspondent is settled around 73-year-old Sybil Van Antwerp, who writes letters and emails to pretty much everyone she knows. They range from her brother who lives abroad, to her child, to her neighbor who she sees almost every day. She really writes to absolutely everyone. As a result, this book takes a little while to pick up on what's actually going on, because you're listening to letters and emails, and honestly, how much controversy and action can you squeeze into all of those? It takes a while to build up to the plot, and as a result, this book does require a lot of patience. Each of the characters is extremely different from the others. In fact, there's clarity in who it is because you hear the address or email address of each character, the to and from, essentially, at the beginning of each correspondence. Now, as an audiobook listener, that part felt weird and awkward, but I can understand how if you were reading this on paper, it would feel completely normal, because you would glance at it, see who it was from, and just move on to the meat of the letter. In the audiobook, however, you don't have that luxury, so it does feel a little bit weird to hear someone's email address read to you, and then hear the email. Regardless, Sybil is writing to a variety of people. For example, one of the people she writes to is the chair of an English department at a local college. Previously, Sybil has been allowed to audit any courses that she wants in the English department, but this new chair is not so keen on that idea. Sybil persists and writes to her over and over and over again. Honestly, her determination becomes almost annoying at some point. But it's also kind of the comic relief in the story, so it's okay. Through each of the correspondences, we learn just a little bit more about Sybil. We learn about her relationships, their strengths, their flaws, and all of the things that make Sybil tick. She really does put her heart on her sleeve, and she puts her heart into her letters. So you do get a sense of Sybil's inner workings, even though she's writing to people. Sybil likes to write to people because she feels like she can process her thoughts and formulate them exactly the way she wants, and that's helpful for us as readers. The audiobook featured a different narrator for every character, and honestly, I kind of found like it might have been unnecessary. I mean, I didn't mind it. It was okay to hear from the different voices. But the most important trait became whether or not it was Sybil that was speaking or writing in this case. And I found that once I knew that, I didn't really worry so much about who the other person was because I was listening really for what it told me about Sybil, not so much what it told me about the other character. Some of the relationships are a bit unconventional. For example, she writes to the special needs son of one of her former co-workers, and they have really a rather intimate, though appropriate, relationship for, an older woman and a younger man who are writing to each other. They really reveal a lot to each other, and I think this is one of Sybil's most raw relationships through letters, and one I found rather interesting. There are themes of aging, reflection, revisiting the past, and Sybil is dealing with all of these through her correspondence. She uses letters to process things that she had previously put aside and wasn't really focused on and now is creeping back into her life. And of course we're hearing things through a bias as we're hearing her own words about herself, but that's okay in a character study and makes a ton of sense. The courage that it takes for Sybil to re-examine some of the more challenging parts of her life really becomes the arc of the story here. This is not a novel with dramatic action. There is a sensitive and subtle character transformation that takes place, and you have to be willing to accept that as an arc or you're not going to enjoy this one. There was, in fact, a moment where I questioned putting this book down. I got to the point where I felt like the stakes were so low that I wasn't sure I wanted to continue. So I did something I don't usually do, and I went back and I read the book summary. Typically, I skip those altogether. I don't like those to bias my interest or lack thereof. But when I read the summary, it made me reconsider and I picked the book back up, and I'm glad that I did in the end. The slow pacing may be a challenge for some readers who seek a little bit more dynamic action, so be aware of that and know what you're getting into before you start. It doesn't spoil anything, but it's helpful to know the quality of this book and the way that it goes about telling a story so you know whether or not it's for you. This book is introspective and totally character-driven. If you're looking for a compelling narrative, I think you have to look elsewhere. But if you're looking for a beautiful character study that really has a lot going for it, then I think you should pick this one up. Overall, if I'm totally honest, I'm not really sure how I feel about this one. When I initially rated it right after finishing the story, I rated it a 3.5, but I'm beginning to feel like that may have been a bit harsh. I think this book has grown on me, and I've begun to think more about how difficult it would have been for the author to fully realize a character with just letters and emails. So my respect for this book has grown overall. I'm not 100% sure what I would give it as a rating now, but I know that a lot of people I've spoken to either love it or hate it. So I'm really curious if you've read it, if you'd let me know which camp you're in. I think I'm somewhere in the middle, but I feel like I lean more towards love it than hate it for sure. But remember, you might love what I hate and hate what I love. So make your own opinion, but thanks for listening to mine. See you next time.